of that. We've got independent artists online streaming, making beautiful digital art of dragons. We've got, we've released a number of pieces of merchandise that people love sending us photos of them. And then, by the way, for me personally, people send me, like you can probably see in the background, like a knitted dragon someone sent me. There's a dragon book they sent me. Dragon board games they send me. People have done like custom ironworks, making dragon bottle openers. Like the fans are super invested in diamond art and things like that. And so it's great that they send this stuff. Sometime we're gonna have to set up a wall of all of it. But yeah, it's definitely brought the community a lot closer together. The fact that we were no longer in this big studio, I felt a lot more personally attached to people. It felt very immediate. And I know that I personally needed the connection.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course! So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is you take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and they plant a tree for you. Okay. Now you could also choose if you want to do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But literally every cent makes a difference here. It's Plant Your Change. And if you want to know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
Now, top. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
Welcome everyone, you're watching The Young Turks. I'm Anna Kasparian, and joining me today is my good friend, an excellent colleague, and the host of The Damage Report, John Iadarola. John, how you doing?
Thank you. I like that I'm a better colleague than friend. Just good friend.
You know, you're all right in the friend category, but you're a fantastic colleague.
Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, we just, admittedly, we haven't hung out much in the last year and a half. Anyway, yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. It's been a very long time since you and I have done a show together.
Right. I mean, it's been like a whole, like 3-4 hours because I was on The Damage Report today. So everyone check out that episode if you missed it live. And we're gonna be talking about the 1-year anniversary of the January 6th Capitol riots. We'll share some video featuring Joe Biden's speech. Later in the show, we actually have 2 stories that are very likely to upset the crypto bro community. We'll be talking about how Puerto Rico is now being utilized as a tax shelter for crypto billionaires and millionaires. And we'll also talk about one of my favorite stories, possibly of the year. I know it hasn't really been a long year. The story of the NFT apes that have gone missing, stolen. What a tragedy.
Where are they?
Well, we'll give you those details a little later. In the second hour, we'll also talk about a state Republican lawmaker who was so upset during a high school basketball game that he decided to attempt to pants a referee. We're talking about a politician who's bullying a referee by trying to pants him. That's a real story that we'll get to later in the show. But before we get to any of that, I just want to encourage you guys to like and share the stream. If you're watching us live, leave us your super chat comments. If you're members, leave us your comments in general, and we'll try to get to them when we go to our social breaks. For everyone else, come on, get with it, man. We're gonna have an awesome show. You don't want to miss it. So why don't we get started? You ready, John?
I am, I think.
All right, let's do it.
He's not just a former president. He's a defeated former president. Defeated by a margin of over 7 million of your votes.
Today, of course, marks the 1-year anniversary of the January 6th Capitol riots, the very riots that were incited by former President Donald Trump. And you just heard from President Joe Biden giving a speech, of course, on this 1-year anniversary, but more importantly, for the first time, really calling out Donald Trump and the incitements that he engaged in, which of course led up to the Capitol riots. Now, we have other snippets from his speech. He did get a lot of admiration, a lot of applause for it, because Joe Biden isn't really known for tough rhetoric, unless he's talking about corn pop, of course. But here he is addressing Donald Trump and the Capitol rioters.
There is simply zero proof the election results are inaccurate. In fact, in every venue where evidence had to be produced, an oath to tell the truth had to be taken, the former president failed to make his case. Just think about this. The former president and his supporters have never been able to explain how they accept as accurate the other election results that took place on November 3rd. The elections for governor, United States Senate, House of Representatives. Elections which they closed the gap in the House. They challenged none of that. President's name was first. Then we went down the line. Governors, senators, House of Representatives. Somehow those results are accurate on the same ballot. But the presidential race was flawed. And on the same ballot, the same day, cast by the same voters. The only difference, the former president didn't lose those races. He just lost the one that was his own.
Now, obviously, I agree with what President Biden says there. I think that the point he made in regard to the Republican wins on the same ballots that do not go contested by Trump supporters happen to be pretty fascinating, especially when on the same ballot they'll complain that there was voter fraud pertaining to the presidential election. So I like what he says there, but the big problem that I have, John, is while rhetorically speaking, Biden is saying the right things, what really matters is what kinds of actions the Biden administration and the whole of the Democratic Party take to prevent the erosion of what's left of our democratic process.
Yeah, you're right, substantively. I do have one criticism even before we get to what you just said, which is more important, admittedly. Rhetorically, the points he's making are indisputable. And in the previous clip, I like that he's being aggressive. I wish that he could deploy that against literally anyone other than Donald Trump, or as you said, Corn Pop. But that's not gonna happen. Maybe a speech or two like that about Kirsten Sinema could have moved the needle, could have done something, but we'll never know because he's not gonna do it. His rhetoric in terms of how he explained a very good point about their lack of issue with all of the other down ballot races was undercut a little bit by the fact that it was like the worst possible delivery of it. But it's a great point, and they don't dispute those. Some of the most like out front people like Marjorie Greene, who literally will not stop talking about how the election was stolen. She is from one of the states. She got elected on that. But again, it's that point being made by Biden is like, I would put it in the same rhetorical category of like 80% of what I say on my show. It's like what I think of is indisputably true and should make sense in a rational world, but it's being broadcast in a different world than a rational one. They're not going to answer what Biden said. It's a great gotcha point that they will never be got by. But the other point though is, should he be making those points? They're true. But I don't know, there's something about the president speaking on the anniversary of January 6th and going, not just denying that the election was stolen or declaring that no rational person believes it, but kind of delving into the minutia of it, to me, sort of like by necessity reopens it as a conversation. Like I worry that seems defensive almost. It makes it seem as if this is a debate that we can have politically when there is obviously no debate to be had there.
I don't think there is any speech that Joe Biden would have given today that would have been good. I know that's, and look.
You get called a Joe Biden fan online.
It's going to reinforce what some, Dem apologists think about me, which is there's nothing Biden can do that'll make you happy, which is not true. That's not true. A speech is just a speech, right? So sure, we can nitpick, we can say that he's, making points that are demonstrably true, but unfortunately attempt to, or create an opportunity to like relitigate something that's already pretty clear. I think that's a valid criticism. I don't know what else he would say though. Like what else would his speech be? Like to me, the president speaking on this day is really not that important. To me, going back to what I said earlier, the most important thing is what kind of actions are being taken by the Democratic Party to, in the very least, mitigate the damage that's being done, not just on January 6th, but more importantly, everything that's transpired following January 6th. Yeah. So I want to go to one more Biden clip, and then I'll give you some more details in regard to what I'm talking about, because it's not just about the insurrectionists, it's not just about the riots on that day, it's about what has been done legislatively on a state level to erode our democratic process. Let's go to the last clip.
Finally, the third big lie being told by a former president and his supporters is that the mob who sought to impose their will through violence are the nation's true patriots. Is that what you thought when you looked at the mob ransacking the Capitol, destroying property, literally defecating in the hallways, rifling through the desks of senators and representatives, hunting down members of Congress? Patriots? Not in my view.
I like that part of his speech a lot. And I don't know if people agree with me on it, but I think that him mentioning the fact that these rioters defecated in the Capitol like that, it gives you, it's gross, obviously, but it gives you the imagery that you need to have when it comes to these people who did what they did that day. Because there really has not been a robust counter by Democrats, especially not by Joe Biden, to the narratives that we've been hearing from the Republican Party. Remember, they keep trying to paint these individuals as patriots, or they try to paint these individuals as tourists, like peaceful demonstrators, peaceful tourists, like nothing serious, nothing to be worried about. Of course, they also provide a buffet of other narratives if you're not buying that, right? Oh, it was actually the FBI, and we'll get to all of those other narratives later in the show. Yeah. But I like the fact that Biden said something in the context of this speech that gave people a real visual of what these people were doing, right? Aside from the clear violence. Yeah, they're crapping all over the floor. They're crapping on desks. Like this is something, these are not patriots. These are not people who are in a healthy state of mind, to say the least. Now, real quick, going back to what I was saying earlier about what has transpired following January 6th. Later in his speech, Joe Biden talks about how we have overcome, the election was certified, almost making it appear as though there's been a great victory in the name of democracy. But things have actually devolved considerably. So for instance, let's go to this headline from US News and World Report. Republican-led state legislatures passed dozens of restrictive voting laws in 2021. States with Republican legislatures have passed waves of new laws, making it harder for constituents to vote in response to the 2020 election, experts say. And we've covered various states in quite a bit of detail with what they're doing to make it increasingly difficult for people to vote, particularly, voters who happen to be Black, people who typically do not have, like, let's say, a state ID because they're out of state students, or don't drive a car and use public transportation. I mean, all sorts of restrictive laws. And there needs to be a robust response to that legislatively. And John, what would that robust legislative response be on a federal level?
I don't know, it probably would look like one of multiple pieces of legislation of varying degrees of quality that have been there waiting to be passed since Biden was inaugurated. And not only have they not done it, but they've barely even seemed like they wanted to. We can at least point to the reconciliation bill and say there was some robust debate for a period. But with the voting rights bill, it's they deferred to Manchin. Manchin was going to go find some Republicans. He swore he'd be able to do it. Obviously, he couldn't because that's ridiculous. And they gradually chopped away bits of it, producing weaker and weaker pieces of legislation. And now they're once again putting the football out there and saying that that's going to be sort of their priority for the rest of January. Well, I really hope that that's true, and we'll be waiting to see. But it's all been there from the very beginning.
I have not seen a real fight for voting rights. And as we know, in order to pass any legislation, you would need to either reform or do away with the legislative filibuster in the Senate, which currently requires 60 senators, which means you would need 10 Republican senators to vote in favor of any bill for it to pass. And Biden, especially in the context of social spending legislation, wants to maintain the filibuster. Some argue, well, he wants a carve out for voting rights. I don't see him fighting for it. Anyone can say they want anything, but the proof is in the pudding. Actions speak louder than words. And I just have not seen that from the Biden administration. Also, more than 40% in the US do not believe that Joe Biden legitimately won the election. This is according to an Axios poll. And it's one of many. We've shown you so many polls indicating that a huge portion of Americans, particularly those on the right, do not believe that Biden won the election. They believe it was stolen by Donald Trump. So this is what I'm talking about when I say that it has not been this massive victory for the Democratic Party or for the country or for our democratic process. Things have continued to devolve, and I worry that Biden is completely disconnected or delusional about it.
100%. Yeah, it's clear. And look, it's the sort of thing, it should be like the issue that, regardless of what any elected Democrat in a position of power thinks about any other individual piece of legislation or like a conversation about immigration reform or whatever, you obviously have to secure your ability to get elected. And they know what's being done. They know what's being done in terms of voter suppression with the pieces of legislation being passed at the state level that you just talked about on TDR this morning. We talked about the secretaries of state elections where big lie Republicans are running to take over virtually every swing state in the country. And if they have any urgency about this, they're not showing it. And the only advice they seem to have for anyone not in a position of power is just out-organize it. Yeah, out-organize not only the baked-in decades of voter suppression that were already there long before Donald Trump. There was already gerrymandering. There was already inequitable distribution of polling places and all that. That already existed. Then they did it during the Trump years, and then they've done it even worse since then. The Democrats lost the 2016 election. How much extra organization do they think is just sitting out there on the road waiting to be picked up? It's ridiculous and it's insulting to the people who actually do that organizing as a full-time job. They have a job too. The elected officials have a job too, and they should start doing at least some version of it.
That's exactly right. Passing off all the hard work to organizers is ridiculous. Well, we got to take a break, but when we come back, we'll give you both Donald Trump's response to Biden's speech and also how other conservatives, including Lindsey Graham and Fox News, reacted to it. It's shocking. It turns out that the president's speech was political. Wow. So we'll give you that and more when we return. Hey everyone, welcome to our first social break of the day. I've got a lot of great comments here. I want to start off with our members. Happy Warrior Dragon says this, and I agree with it. The speech definitely needs to be followed by removing representatives that help this happen. I agree with you on that. I want to be a little more precise though. There were dozens of Republican lawmakers who still refused to certify the election after the riots took place. Yep. Those individuals need to be held to account.
Yep.
And there's no conversation about that. So I think that was a great point, and thank you for sharing your perspective with us. Shikata Ganai says, why do we care when they crap on the floor of the House and Senate when they pee on the Constitution daily and no one says a word? Well, we do hold them to account when they pee on the Constitution. But I think that, look, people tend to react to disgust. And when you think of like a person defecating on a floor like that, it's disgusting. Mm-hmm. So the visual, I think, is powerful. And I particularly enjoyed that part of the speech. John Bogino says, a speech is not a substitute for legislation. God, you guys are the best, absolutely. Glad to see John and Anna on the main show, thank you. And by the way, guys, Cenk is out. He was a little under the weather, not with COVID or anything like that. He got some sort of
cosmetic surgery. It's
exactly
purely for looks.
So he'll be back
long
tomorrow
time coming,
with
honestly.
Face. Yeah, and you guys will love it. Okay, it's a beautiful face. It'll be wonderful. All right, moving on. In our super chat section, we have Alicia Perkins who says TYT rocks my socks. Love you guys, Alicia. We love you. Thank you for writing in. Peter Hamby with another haiku, and I'm not going to ruin it this time. Okay. He, Biden, his words, insurrects Trump's talking points, kicking the coward. Peter Hamby, thank you. That was excellent. Nice. Little Mac writes in and says, Anna, Allison, Bart, Brett, Cenk, Dr. Richie, JR, John, Kate, Milton, Nina, Francesca, and the many more of TYT. I'm so sorry I did not name. Happy New Year. And on the anniversary of Why Are We Fighting, thank you. For all that you do. Thank you so much, Little Mac. You're one of the best, and I'm so grateful that you're part of our audience. Thank you to our new YouTube members, including Christina Reynolds and Iferno Marks. We are not gonna have a bonus episode today because the Power Hour with Nina Turner follows the main show. Definitely check that out. That's also for our members, and you can join by going to tyt.com/join, or you can click on that join button right there on your screen if you're watching us on YouTube. John, we've got 20 seconds. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think that they should clip that out and use it in the literal intro to the show. Power Hour. That gets you fired up.
I mean, you have to say the show's name that way. Power Hour. It's good.
I know.
It's a good show
so
name.
Many great titles for shows. I should have thought more. Damn, it's too late now.
No, Damage Report is fantastic. I was actually a little jealous. Welcome back to the show, everyone. You're watching TYT with Anna Kasparian and John Idarola on this 1-year anniversary of the Capitol Hill riots. We've got more news on that story, so why don't we get right to it? President Joe Biden gave a speech on the 1-year anniversary of the Capitol riots. And while Biden usually takes a more conciliatory tone with Republican lawmakers, that wasn't the case in his speech today. He not only called out Donald Trump, not by name, but it was very clear he was talking about Trump. He also gave a pretty vivid image of who the Capitol rioters were and what their intentions were. And Donald Trump and the rest of the conservatives are not too happy or pleased about it. Now, before we get to Donald Trump's statement, his fuming statement in response to Joe Biden, why don't we give you a little snippet of what Biden had to say?
He's not just a former president. He's a defeated former president. Defeated by a margin of over 7 million of your votes.
Now, Donald Trump, of course, did not like that. And I personally enjoy when his feelings get hurt and when he puts out these unhinged statements. They don't get as much play these days because they're not on Twitter where he's banned. But here's what he had to say in response to Biden. Biden used my name today to try to further divide America. Let's just pause. I already need to pause. Biden didn't actually use Trump's name at all, but it was clear who he was talking about. So, I mean, I guess that doesn't matter that much, but fair enough, exactly. But secondly, Donald Trump doesn't ever get to criticize anyone for dividing the country. Dividing the country is his bread and butter. Dividing the country is what he capitalized on in the lead up to the 2016 election. It is what he leaned into during his one and only term as president of the United States. Division is what he eats for dinner. He loves it. So to say that Biden is dividing the country is ridiculous, especially when it's coming from Donald Trump. Now, I have a ton of criticism for Biden in a million other ways, but being divisive or dividing the country, I think, is crazy, especially when he's gone out of his way to unite with Republicans, especially when he has decoupled the massive infrastructure bill to separate out the public infrastructure, or the physical infrastructure from the social spending, just so he can get Republicans to sign on to the physical infrastructure bill. There's no way I'm ever gonna buy from someone like Donald Trump that Biden is the divisive one. If anything, Biden isn't divisive enough. He's not harsh enough when it comes to the nefarious figures in the Republican Party. But let me continue. The political theater is all just a distraction for the fact that Biden has completely and totally failed. That statement I don't have as much of an issue with. I'm not gonna lie. So let's just put that aside. John, before I get to the rest of his statement, any thoughts?
I think there's quite a bit of failure that we can identify, that we have identified many times on the show. I don't think that's why he's making the statement. To link it together is nonsensical, but Donald Trump is implicated in this, so he has to come up with some sort of defense. Talking about it being divisive on the anniversary of a riot you instigated, and reporting today says you watched with glee, so happy that you rewound the riot and watched it again. I don't know. I feel like you maybe get to share in the division. No, Biden is a lot of things, many of them bad, but particularly divisive. No, we could point out some of the ways that he's undercut his own campaign promises. I would argue there's a case to be made that not helping people out with student loan debt, requiring them to start repaying in the middle of a pandemic. Those are things that could arguably be socially divisive. But no, that's hardly one of the things he's most guilty of.
Trump continues writing. Why is it that the unselect committee nickname is so childish, but whatever. Why is it that the unselect committee of totally partisan political hacks whose judgment has long ago been made, not discussing the rigged presidential election of 2020, it's because they don't have the answers or the justifications for what happened. They got away with something and it is leading to our country's destruction. Now, what's leading to the country's destruction is the fact that this man lost more than 60 court battles challenging the results of the 2020 election and continues to perpetuate this lie that the election was stolen from him. He lost, but he continues to lie to the American people, and that is not only dividing the country, that is leading to political violence. In fact, in poll after poll, Republicans who respond, a significant portion of them argue that, we might need to resort to political violence to take the country back. And to be sure, considering January 6th, they've already done it. And he just continues to lie. He can't help himself. So that's Donald Trump. Trump is gonna Trump. This is what he does.
Yep.
But now let's go to some of the other conservatives, some of the other GOP lawmakers who have weighed in. We've got Lindsey Graham, who is a complete and utter clown. He tweets, "What brazen I can't say this word, I always struggle with it." He accuses Biden of politicizing January 6th. Maybe because January 6th was incredibly political. It was an attempt to overturn the results of our democratic process. It's inherently political. So accusing Biden of politicizing something that's political is incredibly stupid, but Lindsey Graham isn't the only one who did this. He continues to write in his tweet, "I wonder if the Taliban, who now rule Afghanistan with Al-Qaeda elements present, contrary to President Biden's belief, are allowing this speech to be carried."
So did you see, when the Virginia, when people couldn't drive because of the snow and there's the huge backup, and someone had tried to tie it to BLM, like that and the Lindsey Graham speech are inevitably what Twitter has to become. Like in the absence of actual cleverness, just tie two things together, just reference another thing, and that's supposed to stand in for cleverness. And so he thinks he's doing that. He's not engaging.
It's even worse. It's even worse because Lindsey Graham is a massive war hawk. Like he's very hawkish on foreign policy. And so he's like, I don't know, how can I have some pro defense spending, pro military industrial complex baked into this? So he puts out some lie about Al-Qaeda working with the Taliban. They're like,
I don't know. I would like to know, why is he politicizing the Taliban taking over Afghanistan? We can all play this game. Don't politicize anything. Don't talk about the election in a political way. He's talking about them politicizing a coup. You get to politicize a coup. It's pretty political.
What's also amazing is Lindsey Graham himself on January 6th made statements that were very similar to what Biden said in his speech. Was he politicizing things? I don't know. Let's refresh our memories.
It is over. It is over. The final thing, Joe Biden. I've traveled the world with Joe. I hoped he lost. I prayed he would lose. He won. He's the legitimate president of the United States. I cannot convince people, certain groups, by my words, but I will tell you by my actions that maybe I, above all others in this body, need to say this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are lawfully elected and will become the president and the vice president of the United States on January the 20th.
Brazen politicizing, brazen.
No, like that. I'm great. I'm very glad that you brought that up. And look, he said that he was done with Trump after January 6th. That's obviously not true. It's been political. The only question is, in what direction does Lindsey Graham think his politics should go? In the immediate aftermath of the insurrection, I think he somewhat reasonably thought, oh, well, we've clearly crossed a line. This isn't gonna work. It's why he denounced it. It's why Fox News hosts were trying to stop Trump in the middle of it. Kevin McCarthy was against him, but they had, I guess, underestimated the depravity of their base. And so within a month or two, he was headed down to play golf with Trump. I'll remind you, by the way, because I'm very glad that you brought up that speech. Just 2 days later, remember, he was mobbed at an airport by a pro-Trump crowd, chanting at him because how dare you not stand with your president? He was reminded just 2 days after the insurrection how radical this movement had become, but he has reconciled himself to that since then. And he is once again just, a good, loyal, cog in the machine.
Well, he's a coward. I think that moment in the airport probably shook him. And so now he's going after Biden for saying the exact same thing that he said on the night of January 6th following the riots. I want to now go to Fox News host Dana Perino, who also seems to have a problem with a politician using a speech to talk about politics. So let's watch.
The president, though, his remarks were more pointed and quite political, I would say, divisive in many ways. This is how he sees it, Brett. The other thing is that, Brett, we're talking about just choices and tones that you can make when you are a president of the United States. And if your instinct is to escalate rather than de-escalate tension and division, then that's one way to go about it. And in some ways, to me, what I thought today is the president just missed an opportunity to talk about what you just said, which is that our founding fathers were brilliant. They put together a constitution that is not perfect, but it is held together. And you could have shown gratitude to those lawmakers who came back to the chamber after being quite shaken, I'm sure, and their staff's shaken up. They come back, they do the right thing, and Joe Biden is inaugurated, and he is president, and we as a country have moved on. We've got a lot of challenges that we're dealing with, but you could have talked about the strength of our system.
John, as a connoisseur of the devil's lettuce, sometimes my memory is a little fuzzy. So I just wanted to be reminded of what Donald Trump was up to as the Capitol riot was taking place. Because if I remember correctly, Donald Trump had to be urged to take action to stop the violence, but it took him a while. Why was that? What was he up to?
Well, apparently, according to the new reporting, he was watching it and giggling, excited that they're coming to fight for me. He was having fun. He was presumably avoiding phone calls with all of his advisors, because virtually all of them apparently were texting him to stop this. He was approached twice by his own daughter to stop it, but he was enjoying it. And they finally got him to start to record a video. It took forever to put it out because he refused to say anything sane or rational during it. And then eventually the video did come out. We saw it. It was madness. It was him talking about how they're very special people and he loves them very much. So that's what he was doing. But Dana Perino, why are we listening? Dana Perino was talking about people politicizing things. She was the press secretary under George W. Bush. It's such a, it's, as you're growing up, you learn about imposter syndrome and all that. And but sort of the opposite, when you're kids, you think that adults understand everything. They've gotten to their positions because they're capable and competent and all that. And then you grow up and you realize it's not really the case. It is so 100% the same for the news. Dana Perino has been doing this for literally years. She's a professional insofar as anyone in news is. And she just throws out that someone's politicizing something. It's the laziest thing. It's like the attacks against Emma Watson Anytime somebody criticizes Israeli government policy, it's anti-Semitic. It's just, you just throw it out there. It means nothing. It doesn't mean anything to you to make it. And it just makes this whole thing, this attempt to have a discourse about the future of our country, even more pathetic and unbearable on a daily basis.
Well, we've got one more video that I want to just quickly get to, because the worst elements of the Republican Party have been floating this conspiracy theory that, it wasn't really MAGA chuds doing the riots. It was actually the FBI. And so Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Greene held a press conference to continue spreading this nonsense. And it was so awful that even Newsmax cut away from it. But I wanted to give you a quick snippet of what that press conference looked like.
We are here to expose the truth, to ask key questions about what happened on January 6th, who animated the violence, the extent to which the federal government may have been involved. We know this: January 6th last year wasn't an insurrection, but it very well may have been a Fedsurrection. This is the very last thing that happens before the breach. You've got Ray Epps whispering into this guy's ear, and this is the moment of breach. If you were the January 6th committee, wouldn't you want to know what Ray Epps whispered into that individual's ear?
Yeah, I'd like to know, but what does that have to do with your weird conspiracy theory that it was the feds who did this?
Yeah, I don't know. First of all, they have to have a defense. This is what Tucker Carlson has presented to them. Their movement is now led by effectively Alex Jones with a slightly higher budget and a few less pulled pork stains on his shirt. That's it. It's just a conspiracy theorist cult. That's all it is. And they've decided that, okay, saying that it's Antifa, that seems really crazy because all these people are locked up and they were clearly there and they're clearly conservative. So something else has to absolve them of it. To be very clear, the theory that they've concocted that the FBI inspired this does not in any way absolve the individuals who participated in a riot. As you're trying to beat the life out of a cop, it doesn't matter if 30 minutes ago an FBI agent was near you. That's irrelevant. You're trying to murder someone. It doesn't absolve any of the political leaders who told them to go there, who spoke to them that morning. It certainly doesn't absolve any of the members of Congress or the Senate who tried to overturn the election even after all of that violence. It would be interesting, but not absolving in any way. It also isn't true, and the evidence isn't there. But even if it were, it wouldn't prove anything like what they think it would.
We don't want to dedicate the entirety of the show to January 6th. So when we come back from the break, I actually want to talk about a story that, yes, has a component of January 6th in it, but it is a story involving corporations that you will not get anywhere else in broadcast news. So when we come back, we'll talk about all the major corporations who promised to stop donating money to Republican lawmakers who egged the insurrectionists on. Where are they today? Are they back to these legalized bribes? We'll give you those details and more. Come right back. Welcome back to our social break. I'm gonna start off with a comment from Stephanie Z. And Stephanie, I'm really happy that you shared this comment. Don't know about y'all, but I actually teared up from Biden's speech. I'm not losing hope for our country. And I think the country needs optimists. I unfortunately am not one of them, but I'm happy to see people like you still fighting. I mean, it's one thing to just be an optimist. I think that's a losing strategy, but to fight and try to protect what's left of our democratic process is really important.
Yes.
And so thank you so much for watching and thank you for your comment. Anti-Racist writes in and says, as an aside, forcing payment apps to report IRS payments more than $600 a year was in 2001. ARP squeezing a turnip / blood flips table. Yeah, I don't know exactly what you're referring. I know the legislation you're referring to where they wanted to report transactions of $600 or more to the IRS, which I actually didn't agree with. I thought that was a very low threshold for the IRS to be tracking. I think people who are like laundering money and engaging in all sorts of like nefarious activity are usually doing it with larger amounts of money. But you seem angry, and I agree with the anger overall. Brandon Butler
wherever
writes,
it might come from.
Right, exactly. Brandon Butler writes in and says, crypto / blockchain has many positives, enabling unbanked individuals, eliminating need for third-party intermediaries, and democratizing opportunity, which sadly gets ignored by media who focus only on the negatives. Well, in our story, we'll definitely talk about who tends to benefit the most from crypto. And as you can imagine, as I hope you can imagine, it's not the little guy. It's typically the hyper wealthy who have found ways to use it either to skirt taxes, launder money, engage in pump and dump schemes. Yeah, I'm going after crypto and NFTs, and I'll give you the details later in the show, so hold on tight. I think blockchain is fascinating and I think could be used for good. That is not what we're seeing today, and I want to be clear about that. Member comments, we've got Marijuana's #3 fan, not #1, #3. Where has Biden been? We could have used this fire against Manchin. Could not agree more. Moving over to our Twitch community. I want to make sure I read from them as well. There we go. Eldermind Pulse gifted 20 subs. Thank you so much. Intro Nerded Dragon, 9 months prime with a comment. I love this free Twitch / Bezos sub. I love it as well. It's fantastic. Mothra Dragon, 12 months prime with the comment, TYT has kept me going through this past year, although the number of times I've been told to stop talking politics at family dinners has increased significantly. And Metal Kitty Mom, thank you for gifting 5 subs. You also gifted subs during Damage Report, and I gotta admit, I was feeling real jealous, but now I feel pretty good, so thank you. Welcome back to TYT. Well, as many of you may have noticed, the cable news networks have been covering the 1-year anniversary of the Capitol riots, but they haven't really talked about one element to that story that I think is incredibly important. Those corporations who promised to stop funding the politicians who refused to certify Biden as the rightful winner of the election claimed that they would just stop donating, right? But now, where are they? Are they engaging in the legalized bribery again, or are they sticking or staying true to their promise? Well, we've got some news for you on that front, so let's talk about it. Major corporations have continued spending literally millions of dollars to fund the campaigns of Republican lawmakers who aided and abetted the Capitol Hill rioters. One of the ways that they did that was by refusing to certify the election to its rightful winner, Joe Biden. And so after that, they claimed, after the riots took place, these corporations claimed that they would no longer provide campaign donations to these Republican lawmakers. But did they stay true to their promise? Well, turns out, no, of course not. They were hoping that everyone else would stop paying attention and then they can continue engaging in legalized bribery because that's how their bread is buttered. They want to make sure that all these elected officials, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, whether they're insurrectionists or not, are working for them, not working for us or our democratic process. Now, according to a report by the nonpartisan watchdog group known as accountable.us, top US companies and trade groups have donated more than $8.1 million to the Republican lawmakers who voted against Joe Biden's certification as president. Those donors include Boeing, General Motors, FedEx, UPS, Pfizer, American Bankers Association. Oh, the credit unions are bad as well. Credit International, yes, the Credit Association. We've got Chevron, we've got Eli Lilly, we've got Merck, Johnson & Johnson. I mean, that's just a few. I'm not listing everything. That's just a few of the corporations who said that they would either pause or stop donating to these Republican lawmakers, and now they have since continued. So the American Bankers Association was the top donor to these individuals. The ABA gave at least $203,000 to the GOP objectors between January 6th and November of 2021. Who was the top recipient? Well, that would be House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. And he received a total of $333,500 since January of 2021. Now, again, after the Capitol riots took place, all of these companies pretended like they really valued our democracy. They pretended to be outraged, horrified about what transpired on January 6th. Dozens of companies, including Walmart, Amazon, Morgan Stanley, and AT&T said they would stop donating to these lawmakers, while others, including Microsoft, Deloitte, and Goldman Sachs, paused all political donations. Donations to the, get a load of this number. Donations to the 147 GOP objectors soon recovered, though reaching nearly $3 million in each of the second and third quarters of 2021. John, are you surprised by any of this?
I knew that they would eventually get back to it. I guess I'm a little bit surprised at how quickly they did, especially considering that it wasn't, for the most part, it wasn't an election year. Like they're under no obligation. Like they're not even getting pressured as much from the lawmakers to donate, but they do. This is all from them. They want to make sure that those lawmakers are on their side. And honestly, in this period where some corporations are refusing to donate to them, that provides a perverse incentive for others to break that prohibition. Because if those lawmakers are hurting a little bit financially, they might give you even more attention for the same donations that you might have been giving in years past. And so you see them donating. Again, not even an election year. The story is disgusting, not just for the insurrection angle. Let's pretend that there wasn't the insurrection. It's disgusting for all the reasons that it normally would. Corporations should not be allowed to do any donations whatsoever. If their CEOs want to donate money, they can legally. Their workers can. They can already do this. How is money also coming through a corporation? How does that make absolutely any sense, except if you are at some point in this food chain of corruption? And virtually everyone who ensures that this sort of thing can continue benefits financially from this arrangement. The numbers are disgusting. $333,000 to Kevin McCarthy. Imagine if a story came out that like one lobbyist from Merck like passed a burlap sack with $5,000 from one bathroom stall to another. I hope that would be a major scandal. But no, you just do it like through official channels and you can bribe them 60 times as much and it's perfectly cool. No, this is the sort of story that should be a major scandal. And I'm very glad that you're covering it. But unfortunately, most people probably aren't gonna pay that much attention. They've accepted this corruption.
And that's what these corporations really bank on. The fact that the media tends to have a short attention span. The American people tend to be distracted with a billion different things that flood the news cycle on any given day. But it's important to follow through on these stories because I think what you're saying is so right, John. What this also messages to lawmakers is that there are virtually no consequences, regardless of what you do to even threaten our democracy. There might be some tough talk immediately after something like, I don't know, a Capitol riot. But as soon as people look away, as soon as people are distracted with something else, the very politicians who aided and abetted that terrible behavior, incited that behavior then get rewarded with these legalized bribes. Just a few more examples. Boeing, of course, is in the mix. Boeing paused political donations after the January 6th attack and said that it condemned the violence, lawlessness, and destruction that took place in the US Capitol in a statement. But following that, Boeing was also among the largest donors profiled, with its PAC giving $190,000 to election objectors. It's since given $10,000 to California Representative Ken Calvert and $9,000 to Kentucky Representative Hal Rogers, among others, according to the report. So they went right back to doing what they do. And oftentimes when we talk about criminal justice reform, there's a lot of talk among right-wingers in regard to, these progressive criminal justice policies make these criminals think they can do whatever they want with absolutely no consequences. And honestly, there are some instances where there are valid points being made. But what I want to mostly point to is how they have no problem with how these nefarious legislators get incentivized to do whatever they want. And more importantly, when they do something that threatens our democratic process, there are no consequences. There are no consequences when it comes to their corporate donors, and there certainly have not been any real consequences politically. Even when the Democrats hold the levers of power, they have not done nearly enough to hold these lawmakers accountable. Yeah, they're investigating the Capitol riots. You have the House Select Committee doing so, but most of the focus so far has been on, Trump's close circle of people. And even they, I would argue, are unlikely to face any real consequences. So we'll see how it all plays out. I hope that they prove me wrong. But the incentives are in the wrong place. And these lawmakers did what they did because they knew that they would get away with it. All right, shall we upset the crypto bros?
I can't
Are you ready
wait.
for it?
My replies have just been too pleasant on Twitter recently.
How is that ever possible? But anyway,
very
let's get
nice.
to it.
People really
You are
like
very nice. Yeah, but usually that doesn't save you on Twitter. Anyway,
No.
let's get to it. Puerto Rico has become a hot destination for crypto millionaires and billionaires. Yes, they're fond of Puerto Rico's incredibly loose tax policies, and so they're flooding into the country, or I should say, to the U.S. Puerto Rico is part of the United States, US territory, to essentially use it as a tax shelter. So I got a glimpse of what the governor of Puerto Rico had to say about this. He used to be against the current tax policies that have been implemented in Puerto Rico following Hurricane Maria. But now all of a sudden, he is using completely different talking points to support the fact that it's become a massive tax shelter for these billionaires and millionaires. Let's watch.
Crypto millionaires are flocking to Puerto Rico. That's because if you spend at least half the year on the island, you're free of taxes on capital gains. What a deal. The former Republican governor of Puerto Rico, Luis Fortuno, joins me now. Good morning to you. Governor, is Puerto Rico the new tax haven now for crypto millionaires?
Well, Stuart, if people are moving from California or New York to Florida or Texas, we want them to consider Puerto Rico as well. We are part of the US, we are American citizens, but we do not pay federal income tax. We pay local taxes.
Well, Governor, Puerto Rico has a poverty rate around 40%. My question to you is, what does Puerto Rico get out of it? How do those people benefit from this migration?
New capital, that's influx of capital, and jobs. On the one hand, all these people, these are type A individuals. They don't sit around watching TV all day. They want to go out and they're investing in the local economy.
John, apparently you can use the argument of jobs in any context, including in the context of crypto millionaires and billionaires flooding into a country specifically to avoid paying taxes.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure how that creates jobs in Puerto Rico. In fact, I will give you examples of how this has actually been incredibly damaging to the people of Puerto Rico. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, look, the personal financial interests of wealthy people is always presented to the masses as being fundamentally about improving their standard of living, whether they call it, trickle down economics or putting a focus on jobs or whatever. They do that. It's always fake. They don't give a damn about jobs. They replace you with a robot or a microwave if they could. In this case, though, look, I am hardly a crypto expert. And so I'll provide that as an opening for people who their entire personality has been replaced with an obsession with crypto to go into the chat and talk about it. The connection between their personal financial interests when it's like crypto or an ape painting, the connection between that and jobs is obviously 1,000 times even more tenuous than regular a-hole investor talk. It's not about that at all. They want to go there and I guess technically live there, although what does it even mean for any of these millionaires to technically live somewhere? They can go literally anywhere they wanted to drop VAT and do to get lower taxes. And yes, incidentally, they might spend a little bit of money. They might go to a restaurant or something, but they are not there to invest. They're not there to create jobs.
They're not there to look out for the local community. And for those who might be watching this video and who are, really believe in cryptocurrency and maybe you've made some money off cryptocurrency, just go to YouTube later, watch the show first, obviously, and type in the search bar, Bitcoin or cryptocurrency pump and dump. And you will be amazed at how many tutorials there are on how you can get rich from crypto pump and dump schemes. Not news stories about it, literal tutorials on how to engage in it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry for everyone who's like, no, man, cryptocurrency is the future, man. It's not even the future, man. It's now. It's democratizing everything. It's the same Silicon Valley libertarian types, by the way, who are spewing that nonsense. And when you look at who's really benefiting from crypto, generally speaking, it is not the little guy. It has not been a process to democratize things. But let me give you more details. When it comes to Puerto Rico specifically, some of those crypto millionaires and billionaires are not actually interested in doing anything to benefit the local communities there. The movement is alarming an earlier generation of Puerto Rico tax expats, like the hedge fund manager Rob Rill. They call me up saying they're going to literally start a city in Puerto Rico to have their own crypto world, said Mr. Rill, who moved to the island in 2013. I can't engage in that. The newcomers are still debating the exact shape of Puertopia, or that exact shape that it should take. Some think they need to make a city. Others think it's enough to move into old San Juan. And by the way, you should totally trust them because they definitely have good intentions. Here's Matt Clemenson, who is the co-founder of lottery.com. He's one of these people who believes in this Puerto Rico project. He says, we're benevolent capitalists. Oh, you're a benevolent capitalist, building a benevolent economy. Puerto Rico has been this hidden gem, this enchanted island that's been consistently overlooked and mistreated. Maybe 500 years later, we can make it right.
Maybe 500 years later, we can do the same thing that's been done for 500 years. Yeah, no, don't trust. And by the way, look, some people are probably already responding, no, but you don't understand. Like blockchain is this really interesting technology, or like that crypto in some formulation can be good for someone who's not a millionaire. I'm not disputing literally any of that. It just doesn't have anything to do with how crypto is manifesting, what this story is about. For like the technology that underlies the ability to create custom pharmaceuticals can be great, and you can also get an opioid epidemic. You can monetize almost any good development for bad ends, and that is what we're seeing. I'm sure there's great stuff with blockchain. I'm sure NFTs can benefit some small artists, But right now it is being used by people who are already wealthy to get wealthier. And the crypto millionaires are there because they're the people involved in crypto who didn't have literally every dollar they owned stolen from them. Crypto wealth is built on people who invested in crypto and lost it all. That is effectively what it is. If you'd like to roll the dice, then you can participate in that. Maybe you'll get rich, but it is hardly a sure thing. It's being presented as that because people who are in charge of the system are gonna benefit no matter what.
Also, the tax breaks that the crypto millionaires and billionaires are taking advantage of does not apply to native Puerto Ricans. I want to be clear about that. So there's this double standard in the tax system in Puerto Rico, and natives, I mean, I think it's more important to hear from the local communities in Puerto Rico. How do they feel about it? It's one thing to hear from the individuals who have benefited from cryptocurrency and stand to benefit further from the tax laws in Puerto Rico, but I don't trust them. I would rather hear from people living in Puerto Rico who have grown up in Puerto Rico, and they're not too happy about this. In fact, there's a growing movement to do something about it. So one person says this, what's happened here is a perfect storm, said Halsey Minor, the founder of the news site CNET, who is moving his new blockchain company called VideoCoin from the Cayman Islands to Puerto Rico this winter. Referring to Hurricane Maria and the investment interest that has followed, he added, while it was really bad for the people of Puerto Rico, in the long term, it's a godsend if people look past that. That was that I just read you a statement verbatim, but it doesn't stop there. So Andrea Satz says, we're the tax playground for the rich. We're the test case for anyone who wants to experiment. Outsiders get tax exemptions. The locals can't get permits. And gentrification has ended up being a huge problem as a result of this. More than 142,000 locals fled the island in the first year after the storm, according to the Census Bureau. As real estate prices dropped, investors moved in and have driven up prices again in certain areas. The result is that many Puerto Ricans can no longer afford to live in their own neighborhoods, including those who would like to come back home, activists say. The tax break laws are exacerbating the problem as people move to the island and snap up property. And I want you to hear from Bianca. She is an independent reporter who lives in Puerto Rico, and she has noticed how her community, where she grew up, has changed as a result of all of this. Let's watch.
Today I found out that the land behind my house, the one that you see in my videos all the time, where the horses that I give water to live, the land that gives me access to the beach, that land is being sold to a company that develops luxury apartments. You might have heard that Puerto Ricans are worried that our land is being bought up. And this is an example of that. This is private land, but it's also protected land. The government set it aside for agricultural purposes, and it's also supposed to be protected for its environmental value. But I happen to be doing a story about this before it hit so close to home, and everyone I talk to says those laws are not being respected, and that land that was supposed to be protected is getting developed. So I'm making this video not as a reporter, but as a Puerto Rican who's sad and scared that Puerto Rico is becoming a place where only the wealthy have access to our most beautiful natural resources.
So that video went viral, and following that, it appears that the government declared the 7,400 acres of land as nature and agricultural reserves, including the beach that Bianca fought to save. So there was a positive update to that. But the reason why I wanted to share that part of the story with you is because the same tax policies that these crypto fanatics are taking advantage of, obviously will also be taken advantage of by other individuals, including real estate developers and those who stand to profit off of raping and pillaging this land. And it's a huge issue. And anyone who makes this argument that like, no, it creates jobs. We've seen that argument and how it actually plays out in the mainland, and it does not actually play out the way that they would have you believe. And then finally, I do have to get to the inequality that's really baked into cryptocurrency, because I think that's usually left out of the cheery stories that we hear from proponents of cryptocurrency and how things are playing out right now. Let's go to graphic 9. A study by the National Bureau of Economic Research showed that the top 10,000 Bitcoin accounts hold 5 million Bitcoins, an equivalent of approximately $232 billion, with an estimated 114 million people globally holding the cryptocurrency, according to crypto.com. That means that approximately 0.01% of Bitcoin holders control 27% of the 19 million Bitcoins in circulation. And I should also be clear that the thing that seems to be the most admired about cryptocurrency is the lack of regulation. They love the fact that there's very little regulation involved, which is why these pump and dump schemes not only take place, there are literal tutorials on how to engage in them. Pump and dump schemes are, regulated by the SEC in the regular stock market and all of that. Yes, there's still terrible behavior happening in that regard as well, but at least there's like some watchdog, at least there's some regulation. Think about the greed involved here. Think about the lack of regulation. Think about the money laundering that takes place through cryptocurrency. And I just think this is a perspective that doesn't get shared. And the reason why it doesn't get shared, John, is because the value of crypto is dependent on hype. It's dependent on people talking about how amazing cryptocurrency is and it's the future and it's this and that. It persuades others to invest in it to drive up the price of these various cryptocurrencies.
Exactly, which is true of most things, but the relationship is perhaps stronger with cryptocurrency than virtually any other asset. I do disagree one thing though. I think that Elon Musk is just tweeting about particular cryptocurrencies because he's really into it. I don't think it's like a money-making scheme or anything. Also, I agree with those in the audience who are saying we think we've heard pump and dump enough times for the rest of our life, actually. If you could just not ever say that again, please, thank you.
All right, I will do my best. All right, we have a story on NFTs when we come back for the second hour of the show. So get ready, we'll be right back.
What's happening? I'm Rashad Richey, host of Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey right here on TYT. Let me tell you what we do on Indisputable. We go beyond the headline. We make sure that you know the full context of the story. And we also highlight issues that are important to the everyday person. We're talking about criminal justice reform. We're talking about the climate. We're talking about what's happening right in your local community. We also highlight very important issues that are affecting all of us, like the economy, jobs, and we engage in transparent debates with people who may not think like me. We're living in a current social atmosphere where opinions are represented as facts and lies are represented as truth. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Hi, I'm John and I'm new to TikTok, but about 3 years ago, I started my daily political news show, The Damage Report, because I noticed this trend where every morning I was waking up to this tsunami of news that was just generally dreadful and horrifying and shocking. And I thought that if I could spend my time helping people to navigate this, serving as a bit of a life raft, pointing out which news is important and why, there are worse ways to spend your day. We're not an average news show, and we don't want our TikTok presence to be average either. So feel free to let us know what you'd like us to do on the platform, and maybe give us a follow at The Damage Report.
All right, Amazon Prime members, here's how you can subscribe for free on Twitch. Start by linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, and then click that little subscribe or resubscribe button below the stream on Twitch. Scroll down and select the subscribe free with Prime button, and then you're finished. Close out immediately and share your little subscription alert with the chat. Send a cute message along with it, and bathe in the sweet, twitchy, Bezos-funded love. Hashtag Bezos Bucks.
Hey everyone, Matteo Scarapore here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, real suave and good looking, comes in and asks Darren to give him his regular. But for some reason, Darren says no. This man named Rhett Daniels, who's the CEO of a startup called Someone, located on the 36th floor of the same building, is impressed. And he invites Darren upstairs, and then he extends an offer to join his elite sales team. Darren reluctantly joins, and he soon realizes that he's not the only Black salesperson there. He's the only Black person in the entire company. So he goes through hell and back in order to make it to the top. And once there, he has status, money, power, but he says, you know what? I don't like being the token Black guy. So he hatches a plan to help other people of color infiltrate America's tech startup sales teams, redefining what it means to be a minority in the workplace. This book definitely, if you couldn't tell, touches on many things that are relevant to this moment that we're all living in right now, but it's also connected to the many moments in history that have come before today. I hope that you read it, I hope that you enjoy it, and if you want to order a copy, go to shoptyt.com. Thank you, be well, and happy 2021.
Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and John Iadarola with you. In the previous hour, we were talking about how Bitcoin millionaires and billionaires, I should say cryptocurrency millionaires and billionaires, are fleeing the mainland to go to Puerto Rico to take advantage of their tax policies there because they don't want to pay taxes. Well, we've got some negative news in regard to NFTs as well. So let's get right to it. Let's get to that story. Todd Kramer is a man who had spent a considerable amount of money to obtain what he believes is $2.2 million worth of ape NFTs. But now all his apes gone. Apparently someone hacked into his crypto wallet and stole the images. Kramer reportedly clicked on a phishing link purporting to be linked to an app. And that led to the theft of the NFTs. In a since deleted tweet, Todd Kramer wrote, quote, "I've been hacked, all my apes gone. This just sold, please help me." Now, this isn't the first time that NFTs have been stolen by hackers. In fact, in November of 2021, 3 Bored Ape NFTs were stolen from collector Calvin Becerra when hackers manipulated him into logging into his cryptocurrency wallet and handing over ownership of the receipts to them. Now look, there are NFTs, non-fungible tokens, that typically have to do with artwork that's copyrighted. And so the person who ends up owning the NFT doesn't own the copyright. They own a digital receipt to the digital version of the artwork.
What, is that not enough? Are you implying that that's not valuable in some sense? That that's not a good use of our time as a civilization? That's not inherently moral? What are you implying, and I don't understand.
Imagine spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on something that anyone else can right click and save as a JPEG. Mm-hmm. That is what is taking place right now. All his apes gone, John. All his apes gone.
So first of all,
I can send it to him. I'll send him a picture of the ape. He'll be all right.
I think he would probably prefer literally any other piece of artwork because by some weird coincidence, there's not a single piece of artwork tied to an NFT that anyone would pay even 1 cent for if it wasn't an NFT. Weird how that works out. I actually feel kind of bad for him in that he was robbed. He's a human and he was robbed, so I feel bad for him. It's hilarious. Like if I had to have one NFT, it would be his tweet. Like just an image of his tweet is better than any of those pieces of artwork. Yeah, no, I look, you already probably know. Yeah, I would pay, I don't know what, $125,000 for it. I'd take out a loan to pay more.
It's the best. It is the best quote. Of all time.
It is artwork, honestly. No, I hate NFTs. I hate this entire thing. I hate how purposefully hideous every piece of art that nobody even cares about is. I hate how virtually every one of these collections is sort of rife with this weird sort of racism. There's way worse ones than the Bored Apes, by the way. We've talked about them on TDR. The whole thing is just terrible. I hate the whole thing. It makes me think cryptocurrency is awesome and good for the planet when I think about NFTs.
Hold on.
What?
So I did not come across the racism angle to NFTs. And so this whole ape business, is that involved in what you're talking about?
I mean, there are certainly allegations as to why that is what. But by the way, you should understand that there's like this big trend of white supremacists and neo-Nazis like striking it rich and starting up these NFTs. So that's one of the reasons why some of the collections are just like the most obvious racial stereotypes ever. So we don't need to make this whole thing about it, but look it up. There's some great journalistic work on it. Anyway,
well, I was under the impression that this was actually a great way to decentralize, democratize, and create equality, not just in the country but the world. John,
it's so stupid.
What is wrong with you?
I hate it so much. And I understand some people will say, well, look, this is in theory a good way for independent artists to make money. I don't even necessarily dispute that. But does that seem to be how it's being used? No, people are not taking actual art that literally anyone would pay any money for and making it an NFT. They are artificially mass producing via procedural technology art that nobody wants, that is just a speculative online digital asset. That's all it is. And a lot of the techniques that you talked about in the cryptocurrency, similar versions of that are used to generate huge amounts of money. Many of these have fallen apart. They're the most obvious scams imaginable. The people who've run them just disappear with all the money. Or like the whole thing is about ownership, and yet they're seemingly easier to steal than any other product that's ever been produced in the history of humanity. And so look, I feel bad for this guy. I feel worse for regular people who will get suckered into this because many of the traditional avenues for wealth generation have been choked out over the past few decades of American capitalism. And so desperate people will turn to stuff like this because they think it's the only way that they can get ahead. But that is not what the system is made to do. It's not made to make regular people wealthy. And so many of them will end up putting their whole life savings into a dumb image of a truck or something like that. And that'll be it.
All his apes gone. Now, there's one other thing I wanted to address.
I mean, I know everybody's thinking it. I just gotta say it.
Yep, you're right. It is bananas. Okay, no, but honestly, to get serious for a second, the one other thing I wanted to mention is that one of the things that tends to appeal to both proponents of cryptocurrency and NFTs is how it's decentralized, unregulated, but when they get robbed, they like that regulation a lot. In fact, Kramer, of course, was very upset that his apes were stolen. And so he called on OpenSea to help him out, okay? So in response, OpenSea reportedly froze the NFTs after the hackers put them back up to sale. This led to criticism from some crypto supporters. So let's go to one of the tweets that was referenced here. Who was able to freeze the NFTs? Feels pretty anti-crypto to be asking third parties to do this, and ideally they shouldn't be able to. This was just extremely poor OPSEC on your part. True decentralized ownership, no one should be able to step in. Good luck. And by the way, according to The Independent, crypto advocates often look to platform managers or even law enforcement to act.
Yeah. Yeah, it turns out that some sort of like, cyberpunk libertarian paradise isn't necessarily paradise in practice.
Yeah, it turns out that regulations and law enforcement, sometimes come in handy, sometimes.
Yeah, and good, by the way, because I don't want regular people to lose their money in scams. But that is what this is. This was made by people who felt like regular investments, the stock market, derivatives, were too controlled, weren't easily enough scammed. And so they have produced this. That is what it is. And I feel bad for the vast majority of people that get involved in it.
Agreed. All right, well, we got to take a break. When we come back, Ted Cruz says something rational for the first time in his life, and the GOP violently goes after him for it. We've got that story and more when we come back. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our social break. Special thanks to our new YouTube members. We've got Nasser Mohammed, Christian and Darde, and Jason Foshi. Thank you so much for becoming members. You guys are in for a treat, both with the Power Hour that follows TYT's main show today, and also with the post-game show. We also call it the bonus episode, but I like post game better. That follows the main show on most days of the week. There's also all sorts of great exclusive members only programming. And I've been really making a point to have a lot more fun during our bonus episodes. One of my favorite bonus episodes this week was where we talked about cats that are setting fires in South Korea. And I used it as an opportunity to share a lot of personal videos of how awesome my dog is. So definitely don't miss that, it's a lot of fun. Anyway, let's read from, by the way, one other programming note that I wanted to give you guys. Tonight, after after the Power Hour, check out Jordan Yule's show, Deep Dive. So that's at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, twitch.tv/TYT. I got a lot of love for Jordan, super smart guy. His Twitch show is amazing and he talks about a lot of important issues. So
he
check
does,
that out.
And has great interviews. Also, Jordan is gonna be back this Friday on Game Busters, and I believe I will be playing Fortnite with them.
Oh, that's fun, I love it.
So definitely tune in.
All right, so and by the way, apparently you say, he's back, and yes, he is back from his jet-setting fake socialist vacation. All right, so
we already knew he's a fake socialist. He has clothing and lives somewhere.
Apparently he was like vacationing in Europe, so people are like, not people, like TYT's like giving him a tough time about it, jokingly.
Good. He deserves it.
Totally, I would love to go to Europe. That sounds amazing. Okay, anyway, going to our comments. Kevin writes in and says, all of this talk about the insurrection, is Congress honestly trying to assess its effects, or are they just distracting from their failure to pass the Build Back Better Act? I think that this is really about, honestly, I think that they are I'm worried that it's really about leaning into something that they think they can campaign on. That's what I worry about the most. So are they really gonna do something about it? I guess we'll see. I'm again worried that they're just using it as like, look at all the terrible things that Republicans have done, please vote for us. But you have to deliver the goods to your base. And they've failed to follow through on many of their promises. Grandma Sunshine Dragon writes in and says, just ordered my Dragon Squad hoodie. Ooh. Anna, if you're ever near North Plate, I don't know where that is. You better Nebraska. Look me. Oh, that's in Nebraska. Okay, got it. You better look me up so we can share the devil's lettuce. Love to you all. I love to share devil's lettuce with good friends, audience members whenever I get the chance. So that sounds fantastic. All right, I'll read a few more of your comments when we come back for the show. I'll see you there. Welcome back to the show. Anna Kasparian and John Idarola with you. I wanted to share one quick comment from Lena Peak, who wrote in and says, as someone who lived in Puerto Rico, I witnessed how much these people, meaning crypto millionaires and billionaires, don't care about local Puerto Ricans. Check out independent journalist Bianca Gralau's work. And we did actually share a video from the very journalist that you're speaking about. And so yes, I think, thank you for sharing that perspective, because I do think it's important to hear from people living in Puerto Rico, people who have lived there their entire people going there specifically for tax shelters. All right, well, welcome back to TYT. Let's get right to our next story. Senator Ted Cruz is usually one of the craziest members of the Senate who is willing to do and say the most damaging things to our country. But recently, he had a comment about the January 6th riots that was actually incredibly rational, but he's getting a lot of backlash about it from right wingers. So without further ado, let's hear what he had to say.
Republican senators. What are they busy doing? Well, they're busy repeating the talking points that Merrick Garland has written for them. Here's one example.
We are approaching a solemn anniversary this week, and it is an anniversary of a violent terrorist attack on the Capitol, where we saw the men and women of law enforcement demonstrate incredible courage, incredible bravery, risk their lives to defend the men and women who serve in this Capitol.
Now, let's be honest, everyone who's conservative appreciates Ted Cruz. I mean, I don't like him, but you gotta appreciate him. He's legitimately smart. He's one of the more articulate people to serve in the Congress, maybe the most articulate. He doesn't use a single word by accident. Every word Ted Cruz uses is used intentionally. He's a lawyer. He described January 6th as a violent terrorist attack. What the hell's going on here? You're making us think maybe the Republican Party is as worthless as we suspected it was. That can't be true. Reassure us, please, Ted Cruz.
So, we played the Tucker Carlson commentary in addition to what Ted Cruz said to kind of kill two birds with one stone here. Ted Cruz says something rational and the right wing goes after him pretty aggressively. And Tucker Carlson is not the only one. John, I know you talked about this a little bit with me on the damage report this morning, but now that the story has kind of settled in your mind, what do you think this means for any Republican lawmaker who might want to speak out against anything that Trump may like, but is actually pretty damaging to our country and could erode our democratic process?
Yeah, I think that from the very beginning of Trump's run in 2016, we have had a variety of times where it seemed like people speculated that maybe some sort of alternative could coalesce, some sort of anti-Trump in 2016 alternative. Ted Cruz himself attempted to be that actually during that primary as his presidency went on, and he was an absolute disaster. You had a few Republicans try to band together and maybe talk about potentially doing some sort of primary run or a third party challenge or something like that. And it's just never really worked because the issue with it is that, well, first of all, there's the structural impediments to third parties, but there's just not a base for it. There are just not enough regular conservatives out there that want anything other than Trump branded conservatism. Trump branded now, or potentially even more deranged in the future. And we had maybe, I think, a last gasp of an effort for that alternative after he lost the election. It seemed like, well, maybe this is an opening. I mean, after all, he was rejected by the country. He tried to overturn the election and it didn't work. But the issue was that the base stayed with him. And because the base stayed with him, many of the politicians, regardless of whatever they might think internally about any of this, even the ones that initially were critical of him, they can't continue it because they can't continue as a politician with that position. There's just not a constituency for it. Unless they convert to being Democrats, they can't get elected as Republicans. And so Ted Cruz, he might be willing to make a comment. I doubt it's gonna be sustained. I doubt we're seeing the beginning of a durable change in how he approaches Donald Trump individually or the Republicans' anti-democratic trajectory. And so I just, until Trump is literally gone from the party, like the filet-o fish finally catch up to him and he's just definitely not gonna run anymore. I don't see it happening. And honestly, even once Trump is gone, the alternative is probably gonna be worse. And I don't think it's gonna look like Ted Cruz. I think it's gonna be a slightly more savvy Trump style whack job.
I wholeheartedly agree with what you said, especially that last part. I don't think that Trump is necessarily the important element to this equation, right? Like for a long time he was, but I do think that there are alternatives who can create a cult-like following similar to what we've seen with Trump. And the reason why I say that is because, Trump's base, while there are people within that base who I think are probably too far gone to persuade to come see the light, there are people who I don't think are necessarily like inherently terrible people, but they've been radicalized, they've been propagandized by this very well-funded right-wing media bubble. And look, people can get radicalized online so easily. I mean, we've seen it happen with QAnon, we've seen it happen in so many different ways. And as long as that right-wing media infrastructure exists, I have no doubt that whoever serves as an alternative for Donald Trump will have the same type of like cult-like following. Now, they have to have some level of charisma, I guess, some characteristics that speak to these people. But I think really the heart of the problem, and not to sound too much like Cenk, because Cenk harps on the media more than anyone else, right? But it is true. The media plays a huge role in what people believe, how they become propagandized, and what exacerbates that is the algorithms online. We keep getting served up more and more of the content that is likely to keep us engaged and is likely to reinforce our preconceived notions. And that is a huge problem. And so Ted Cruz, I mean, this was, if you would have asked me, hey, what would you expect to happen after Ted Cruz says something rational? No doubt I would have predicted this. Of course they're gonna come after him. And Tucker Carlson isn't the only one. Election Wizard on Twitter writes, Bannon began his show this evening by rolling the tape of Ted Cruz's January 6th terrorist comments. My problem is with the gutless Republican Party, they will not take a stand. This is why we've won more elections than we've lost, and we've lost the country in the process, says Bannon.
Well, but you lost the country because you lost the election. That's the whole thing that we're talking about right here. You lost, you dingus, and he knows that. He of course knows that. But he can't say it on air because then he'll be treated like Ted Cruz.
And we can't forget that Ted Cruz isn't completely innocent here, especially when it comes to the issue of the Capitol riots. In fact, why don't we go to the next video and give you a little taste of who Ted Cruz is and the lies he perpetuated about the 2020 election.
We went into this election with the country deeply divided, deeply polarized, and we've seen in the last 2 months unprecedented allegations of voter fraud. This past week, I spent writing out a position and assembling a group that ultimately of 11 senators that we put out yesterday that we will together object to certification in order to force the appointment of an emergency electoral commission to perform an emergency audit of the election results to assess these claims of fraud. We need to step forward and defend the rule of law and protect the integrity of our elections. And what I would urge of this body is that we do the same, that we appoint an electoral commission to conduct a 10-day emergency audit. For those on the Democratic aisle who say there is no evidence, they've been rejected, then you should rest in comfort. If that's the case, an electoral commission would reject those claims.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote of the state of Arizona that the teller has verified appears to be regular in form and authentic?
Mr. Vice President, I, Paul Gosar from Arizona.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
I rise up for myself and 60 of my colleagues to object.
Is the objection in writing and signed by a senator?
Yes, it is.
It is. Now listen, on the other hand, President Trump's rhetoric, I think went way too far over the line. I think it was both reckless and irresponsible because he said repeatedly, and he said over and over again, he won by a landslide. There was massive fraud. It was all stolen everywhere. That's not responsible. And you've never heard me use language like that.
I don't know, John. It seems like Republican lawmakers like Ted Cruz like to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah. Like he gets absolute minimal points literally today for admitting the obvious, which is that it's a terrorist attack. Other than that, he's basically as bad as any of them and arguably worse than many, because not only did he participate as one of those more than 100 Republicans last January 6th, but he was one of relatively few Republican senators that was willing to do it. And Ted Cruz, like some in the meet, we were having this conversation about Sean Hannity yesterday. He might not as enthusiastically, convert the Republican Party over like fully into anti-democratic fascism. But if he believes that that's the only way he can get elected, or if he can continue to be relevant in the party, he is perfectly willing to go along with it, and that is morally as bad.
Absolutely. I mean, the guy, his wife, his father was insulted by Donald Trump during the 2016 election, during the Republican primaries. And then he turned around and did phone banking for him. It tells you everything you need to know about how spineless Ted Cruz really is. So with that said, why don't let's take our final break, because when we come back, we're just gonna have fun, okay? We're gonna talk about the Pope, who believes that you, audience, if you do not have kids, that you are incredibly selfish. We'll play that video and more. And then finally, we'll end the show with a state lawmaker in Tennessee who attempts to pull down the pants of a referee during a basketball game. Insane. We'll be right back. Joshua Zimmerman, thank you for being a new YouTube member. We appreciate you, along with all of our current members and those who have left us some super chat comments. Chaplain Fred, AKA Prayer Dragon, says, hey John, I missed TDR today, had another 12 hours of madness in the hospital. Anyways, what is this Fox goon talking about? Nothing she said makes sense. Katie Porter / marijuana 2024, hail the tail. I like how it was just addressed to you, John. So that's what Chaplain Fred had to say.
Thank you.
The breaker of walls says, I'm a unionist for Medicare for all and Green New Deal. Crypto needs to be green, true, but you have to explain how we can trust Wall Street and the Fed paid by crypto. Why don't we go back to postal banking? I'm not saying I don't trust the Fed, I don't trust Wall Street, but I also don't trust what's currently happening with a deregulated cryptocurrency situation that we're seeing right now. So that's really my only point. Virginia Thomas, AKA Ice Dragon, says, it's like what they're doing in Hawaii. She's referring to the people, the crypto millionaires going over to Puerto Rico as a tax shelter. It's like what they're doing in Hawaii. The natives have nowhere to go. True. Jessica Cartier says NFT should stand for Nazi fraudulent transactions.
Jeez. That may be even going further than I'm willing to go.
That was strong, and you know me, I like strong. We've got Dank Prolly or Proll. Biden only divides corporate Democrats from the actual left. No More Trigonometry writes in and says, why are you guys politicizing the attempted coup of the political election? That's a sarcastic comment, of course. Fiery Witch says, gotta wonder what Trump has on Lady G.
Guys, let's not do it. It's a derogatory thing about Lindsey Graham. Let's just not.
Oh,
let's be better.
I didn't realize that. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
And feel free to attack me for asking for that.
Yeah, I agree with John, but let's also not be too hard on our viewer because no one's perfect, and I get it.
I love our viewer, but let's be better.
Yeah, in our Twitch subs, we've got that Yank Ryan, 3 months Prime with a comment. Dragon Squad, let's go. John, I feel like the main show needs to have its own squad because I'm getting a little I'm envious. Okay, I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm envious.
Well, I mean, but I think TDR has the Dragon Squad, but I think TYT just has people who loved the Turks. People love it. They're part of it. They've been for so long.
That's true.
It's so much an identity. It doesn't need to be labeled. But feel free to choose a mascot.
I really want a mascot, but Salt Shaker might be fun. I don't know, we'll see. Octo Squiddies says, if you're an environmentalist and hate fossil fuels and don't want our earth to burn, you also hate cryptocurrencies. That is a very good point. We have talked about how cryptocurrencies produce CO2 and all of that, so. Welcome back to TYT. Let's get to what I would argue is the most fun segment of the show, starting with the Pope. What? All right, let's do it. Let's talk about it. So, notable virgin Pope Francis says that choosing to have pets in lieu of children is actually incredibly selfish and even diminishes humanity. Here he is in yesterday's address to the Vatican.
E oggi anche con l'orfandad c'è un certo egoismo. Si vede che la gente non vuole avere figli, o almeno uno e niente di più, no? E tante coppie non hanno dei figli perché non vogliono. O hanno uno e non di più. Ma hanno due cani, due gatti. E sì, i cani e i gatti occupano il posto dei figli. Sì, fa ridere, capisco, ma è la realtà. E questo rinnegare la paternità e la maternità ci diminuisce, ci toglie umanità.
So, John.
Yeah.
Neither one of us have children. We are diminishing humanity. We're also very selfish. And more importantly, this is the part that I don't want people to miss. If we do one day decide to have children and we decide one is enough, ain't good enough. That ain't good enough. It's always a trap. And by the way, he was transparent about it right there. He's like, some of these couple, like they'll have one. They'll have one, because one isn't enough. It's always a trap. As soon as you have the first one, it's like, when's the second one coming? Where's it? By the way, it's super creepy. People, if you happen to be one of those individuals, like, when are you gonna have a kid? When are you gonna have a kid? Do you understand how creepy that is? It is creepy. When are you going to fornicate for the specific purpose of reproducing? None of your business.
Yeah.
Move it along. Move it along.
And it's very much like an ends justifies the means sort of thing, because it's socially acceptable to ask someone to have sex to produce a kid, but if you just ask them to have sex, that's weird. If you just inquire too closely about it, that's weird. No, what I am joking about is creepy in the same way that that entire thing from the Pope is creepy. It's just bad commentary, no matter who it comes from. But obviously, he is on very shaky, like, personal life experience ground to be making claims about what people should be doing, either in their bedroom or in terms of producing kids. Also, it's like a terrible world we live in. Like, if you want to bring a kid into it, I think it's perfectly fine. I intend to. But the idea that you would obligate people who might not have the resources to feel economically stable enough to raise a kid, let alone multiple kids, and for those people who don't, or for maybe who have been having a really rough time of it economically, or rough time in terms of the pandemic, that might be drawing some sort of emotional support from an animal, the idea that you would then shame them for that.
Totally.
Like, this is exactly the opposite position that a religious leader is supposed to have. Just looking out there at a population that's had a difficult time and told them, no, suffer more, and any of the coping mechanisms you've used, you should feel bad for that. Thanks, Pope.
Now, John, I don't want to be unfair to the Pope, because he did in fact address any of the concerns you might have regarding the risks associated with having children, okay? And here's what he had to say. While saying couples unable to have children for biological reasons could consider adoption, he urged potential parents not to be afraid of embarking on parenthood. Having a child is always a risk, but there is more risk in not having a child, he said. Oh, okay then, okay. No, I would argue there's a lot more risk in having a child versus not having a child. There is the cost of education, there's climate change, there's school shootings, there is the fact that you could lose your job and not be able to provide for that kid. Also, what is the world gonna look like for the kid you bring into the world? And I'm not trying to discourage anyone who wants to have kids from having kids. I don't want to scare anyone, but I do think that people have legitimate concerns that inform their decision against having kids. And it's no one else's business to chime in on that. And more importantly, let's address this accusation of selfishness, because that's the thing that really gets me. I would venture to say that demanding that someone change his or her entire life to have children to please you is selfish. I think that's selfish. That is selfish.
Yeah.
That's it. End of story. None of your business. I don't care if you're the Pope. I don't care if you're the president of the United States. I don't even care if you're my own parents. Stay out of my business. I'm not having kids. If I decide to have kids, it'll be my own decision. But it's just unbelievable that literally the most selfish thing is demanding that people change their entire lives to have kids, and then they're the ones who turn around and accuse others of being selfish for not having kids.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, it's such shaky ground. Like, has he not watched culturally, like, how people feel when you encourage, like, you ask when they're gonna like switch to a vegetarian diet or something? And then it's so much less personal than having kids. So obviously it's shaky ground. Tread carefully, and he is very much not. Maybe something's lost in translation, I don't know.
Maybe, but he's the Pope. Look, and that's the other part of it. Popes are gonna pope. Like, of course he's gonna have this perspective. I guess I shouldn't be, I'm not surprised, and I'm not upset at the Pope because this is to be expected from him. But the thing that riles me up is that this is not just a perspective among religious people. This is just like a long held societal expectation. Like, of course you're gonna have kids, and if you don't, what's wrong with you? And I especially love parents who like look incredibly overwhelmed. They haven't slept for months. They're struggling with the cost of everything associated with having a kid. And then they're like on your ass about having children yourself. And it's like, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm so happy. I feel so fulfilled. When are you gonna do it? I don't wanna do it. That's it. I don't wanna do it. And you don't look happy, you look miserable. Yeah. Anyway, with that said, I wanna show you a picture of my dog, not a picture, a video of my dog, Charlie.
Oh.
And it'll explain perfectly why I have opted for a dog as opposed to having children. Let's watch.
All right, buddy, I gotta go. All right, bud. Give me a kiss. Thank you. I'll see you later, okay? Okay, you go.
Charlie gives us a kiss when we leave for work every day.
So you realize that in that video, he is like directly replacing what a kid would do. And what I just saw was
But
Christian,
would a kid
who I
do that?
assume
Would
is a
a
very
kid do
selfish
that?
man. Look at him. He has taken a dog and elevated it to the position of a kid. What a selfish a-hole. Thanks, Pope.
All right, a little more substance in regard to what's happening with the birth rate, because it's not just the Pope who's alarmed by this. More and more people are opting out of having children. According to the US Census Bureau, the proportion of households made up of married couples with children fell from 40% in 1970 to 20% in 2012. Wow, that's actually pretty shocking. But 7 in 10 households included a pet. And I would argue for obvious reasons, they are delightful. During the COVID-19 pandemic, and cheap, relative to children, of course. During the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a further marked fall in the birth rate. In Italy, 22% fewer babies were born in December 2020 than in the same month a year earlier. In Spain, the drop was 20%. In France, 13%. You know, that actually also surprised me because I kind of assumed that since everyone's working at home or staying home and they're with their significant other, you know, people be fornicating. But no, people have not decided to have more kids. I thought there was gonna be like a second baby boom, but that did not happen.
No.
And yeah. And you know, people are concerned about the costs associated with having kids. So look, I think there are plenty of couples out there who do want to have children, but they hesitate because they're scared about the lack of a social safety net, the lack of support they get from their country, their community. And so if you want to increase the birth rate, the best way to do it, if you ask me, is not by shaming people, but by creating a society in which there is a safety net and people feel comfortable bringing life to this world. You get what I'm saying? That's way more important.
It's the answer to the Pope's concerns. Also, if you're an insane right winger who doesn't believe that women should have any autonomy over their body, then make them more comfortable bringing children into the world. That's one way to potentially accomplish your goals.
All right, are you ready for pants off, dance off? Because that's how we're gonna end the show.
Come on.
No.
Wait, what do you mean then? Sorry, I'm actually not familiar.
By the way, Pants Off, Dance Off was a real show back in the day. I think it was on VH1 if I'm not mistaken. And I can't believe that was a show. Like they would play music videos and then someone would dance while taking off articles of clothing as the music video was playing in the background. It was
to see that sort of thing in the modern era, you have to watch Happy Half Hour.
All right, let's get to the next story, the last story of the day. A state representative in Tennessee got so riled up during a high school basketball game that he attempted to pull the pants of a referee down. This is Jeremy Faison. He is a politician, a Republican politician from Tennessee, and he had a bit of a meltdown this week. But again, had nothing to do with being a lawmaker, had nothing to do with politics. Apparently, it had everything to do with the calls the ref was making during a high school basketball game. Let's watch. I can't believe, like, we have seen some crazy stuff in politics, in the news, and that shocked me. Okay, so he is a Republican member of the House, the Tennessee House of Representatives. He represents the 11th district, and he's also the chairman of the House Republican caucus. The ref had asked a game official to call the police, but that never happened, and the state lawmaker was able to leave without incident. So John, initial thoughts on this?
I don't know, like, do you ever? You've been in one or two physical. No, you don't pull down people's pants. You've been in one or two physical, like, altercations, and you've probably imagined others. Like, do you have a go-to move? Like, maybe this is just his. He doesn't have a wide range of, like, attacks prepped mentally. He just goes for that. The last time he fought when he was a little kid, the go-to move was pull down the pants, and so he just goes right back to that. I don't know. Do you have a different move?
I just go with what my gut tells me I need to do. That's my move. Yeah.
What do you think? Was his objective literally to have that man be basically naked? What is
he
it
wanted
like
to
a
bully and humiliate him?
It's just so weird. I don't understand. Like, lots of weird stuff obviously happens during sports, and the lower the stakes of the sporting event, seemingly the more seriously people take it and the more they're willing to do. You've covered on TYT any number of Little League games that have parents knocking each other out and stuff like that. I understand that, like, you slap each other on the butt as a congratulations, you dump drinks over them as a congratulations. It's a weird place, but I haven't seen this. I hope that it's not the beginning of a trend. That's all. I sometimes go outside, and now
it's not. I mean, it's not the beginning of a trend. Pantsing people is a long-held tradition, certainly in the United States, but not among lawmakers, right? So I'm hoping that it doesn't become a trend among lawmakers. He did face some backlash and took to Facebook to apologize about it. So why don't we hear from this state lawmaker about what motivated him to do it and why he's apologizing? He says, for years, I thought how wrong it is when a parent loses their temper at a sporting event. It's not Christian and it's not mature and it's embarrassing to the child. It's embarrassing to the child have always been my thoughts. Unfortunately, I acted the fool tonight and lost my temper on a ref. I was wanting him to fight me. So there you have it. We now know what his intentions are. Totally lost my junk and got booted. This guy sounds really smart. My junk and got booted from the gym. I never really lost my temper, but I did tonight, and it was completely stupid of me. Emotions getting in the way of rational thoughts are never good. I hope to be able to find the ref and ask for his forgiveness. I was bad wrong.
Oh my God, like, a letter like that is supposed to allay the concerns a regular citizen has going into the situation. Not only do I still have the same concerns about him pulling down people's pants, but I have all sorts of new ones. I was bad, dumb bad. That's really weird for a legislator in terms of communication. But also, I lost my junk. I don't even think that's an expression. But if it was, can we all agree it's like weirdly sexual? There's a huge sexual undercurrent to this entire thing, and it's about politics and sports. So I don't know why it would be sexual, but nobody watching this can deny that it is.
Also, I mean, look, I'm happy he didn't succeed in pulling the poor ref's pants down. But like, as we're making light of this, and I don't mean to hide the seriousness of doing that to someone. That is a serious issue. Like, to anyone, even like, take the politics out of it. Even if it was like two random people during a high school basketball game, it's done intentionally to humiliate and to bully, and it's assault. You're putting your hands on someone and you're pulling their pants down. It's awful. What he did was awful. But of course, he talked about what a good Christian he is in his apology. So his constituents seem to be accepting what he's saying. Oh, we all make mistakes. It's okay as long as you've learned from this. And hopefully he has. Representative Gloria Johnson, who's a Democrat in the state of Tennessee, says, as I have said, many in the supermajority are childish schoolyard bullies focused on petty retaliation. pantsing a ref on the gym floor is next level bullying, not even the stuff of middle school locker rooms.
Well, maybe the stuff of middle school locker rooms.
I never really experienced that kind of stuff when I was in school, to be honest with you, but I know it happens, and it typically happens among school-aged kids who are bullying each other. It's crazy for an adult, especially a lawmaker in Tennessee, to do that.
Yeah, it's 100%. Dude, but is that women don't do that even in school, right? Like that's a dumb guy thing, right?
Yes, it's a dumb guy thing.
Okay, well, let's leave it in school.
All right, well, John, thank you for stepping in for Cenk Uygur. And you were wondering if he's gonna be okay to do the show tomorrow. I would venture to say he will be, because up next is Power Hour with Cenk Uygur and Nina Turner. Enjoy the show, we'll see you soon.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now, these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitsing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy.